Good? Okay. Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Sarah O'Reilly, and I'm talking today about Connect and CDP. This is just obviously like a 15-minute quick flash-in-the-pan kind of demo. Ivan has like a full Connect kind of session happening just after lunch, so I'd recommend that if you're interested in Connect. So I'm talking about CDP and Connect. So here they sit in the kind of hexagon of the composable DXP for Sitecore. And what I'm going to be talking through today is basically CDP collecting lots of kind of behavioral data, online, offline, multiple different channels. That's what a customer data platform is for. Building a segment using that customer data, then exporting that segment to a paid media channel using Connect. So we're going to be talking about how Connect can facilitate that for Sitecore CDP. And then finally, obviously, it comes full circle. We're collecting all of this data about users. We can then measure that impact that we've had on that particular campaign. So with that being said, I'm going to launch pretty much straight into the demo that I have here. So hopefully you can see this. 1 second. Sorry, bear with me, bear with me. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, sorry, it's showing my other screen is the issue. This one, which I believe you can see. Sorry. I'm going to in a minute now. I have a backup. We'll just go on to that, I think, probably. I have a... backup video. I can just show you. Yeah, positive, yeah. Okay, so unfortunately to show you the video I recorded earlier. If anyone wants to meet me afterwards, I can show you the live demo, okay? So basically what we have here is we're starting off inside of creating a segment. So here I'm creating a segment, and the key thing I want to say we can do here with CDP, because it's session and order data and everything else that we have inside the CDP, we can be creating something like, you know, we don't want to, for example, advertise mattress to a customer if they purchased it in the last 2 years. We want to suppress people from a campaign about a particular article if they've already read it 1 year ago and things like that. So that's the kind of thing we can be creating here with segments inside CDP. So here I am inside CDP creating my segment, and what I want to do is export this particular segment. So I've built this segment here, and it has about 15 different customers in it. So the first thing I can do here is I can run to basically calculate how many people are inside my segment, and I can see here there's 15 people, and I can go and have a look at one of those individual users as well. So here I'm looking at a user in the CDP for Matthew, and what I can do is I can have a look as well at the properties related to Matthew and everything else. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the details and see where it's being used. And one of the places where I'm using this segment is in an export to Google Ads. So I'm going to open this up and show you how we do segment exports inside Sitecore CDP. So here's the setup of an audience sync. And you can see here, it ran here on the 20th of March, but I can show you it running live, for example, if we do it again. So I can see here it's using my segment, and I can go in here and edit it. Now, when I go in and edit my segment, I can set up here to configure my schedule for how often I want this to run and everything else. So, for example, here, I can set it to start running, for example, from today, from then onwards. I can set the time I want it to run and everything else. So here I am setting up exactly how I want my export to be from CDP. And I'm still inside Sitecore CDP when I'm doing this and setting all of this up. I can also select here from a drop-down from all the segments that I've built. I'm using one here for active segments with a propensity to purchase. I can also add in here additional conditions. So for example, if I've built my segment, I now want to tailor and filter in that audience even more. I can do that very easily here by using a drop down here with some of the different conditions available. Below that is the setup for my export. So here I'm exporting my segment to Amazon S3, and that's kind of a recommended implementation. And every time it completes, I'm going to get an email, and we're also going to fire off a webhook to Workato, which is the platform that we're using for Connect. So that's where that webhook's going to go. I'm also exporting here some data as well. So here you'll see, for example, I'm exporting the email, first name, last name. I'm going to be exporting into Google Ads, so actually I'm just going to need the email, but I just wanted to show you what it might look like if I was exporting more data. So this here is FreeMarker, by the way, and it's basically used to define how my JSON is going to look in the export. This is what my JSON looks like. I can also export a CSV from here as well. So here's how I'm defining what fields from the CSV for the people in that segment I want in my particular export. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to jump over and have a look at Connect and see how that works and everything else now that I've shown you the setup inside Sitecore CDP. So if I jump over to Connect, I'm going to start off with a blank recipe just to kind of show you how this might look. So to start off with, there's a trigger for my particular recipe that I might want to set up here, and then I'm going to put in some actions as well. So I'm just going to build this with you to show how it works, and then I'll use a running one to show you how the whole thing fits together. So to start off with here, I can obviously pick a schedule that I want this particular recipe to run on. Like, for example, here every 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, whatever I want it to be. There's also, I can set up triggers from different connections that we have available in Connect. There's thousands of connections available in Connect, and they have things like Kafka as well. So here I'm just showing, for example, what's it like if I'm getting it in from Kafka. In my case, I'm looking for it to be from a webhook. So I can set this up here, click on webhook, and then I can start setting up whatever the URL for my webhook is going to be. And that's what I'm using in my audience sync that you saw there earlier. So here you can see how I'd set that up. I give it an event name, and it basically gives me then a URL that I'm going to use inside audience sync in that particular case. Okay, so after this, what I'm going to set up and do here is start showing all the different actions that we have available inside Sitecore Connect as well to start building this out. So if I click on this here, you'll see that I can go through if statements, I can have loops. You'll see later I have mapping functions, I can handle errors, I can do all of that. The first thing that I want to do in my case is I'm just going to pick a particular app that I want to do an action in, and it's going to be a Sitecore product, so I'm going to start filtering through all of those. And you'll see as well the number of different products we have available inside of those apps. So we'll see that now. Okay, so first of all, just to show you, I mentioned we've thousands of different applications available. Here's me just scrolling through a few of them so you can get an idea of the number of kind of out-of-the-box kind of integrations that are available here. So for me, in my case, I'm interested in ones coming from Sitecore. So I can put in Sitecore here, and it's going to filter for me all the kind of out-of-the-box connections we have in Sitecore. So you can see here the one that I'm most interested in is Sitecore CDP, but obviously there's many others, and Ivan's going to go through those, I'm sure, in a lot of detail and everything else to do with Connect. So you can see here as well, when I click on Sitecore CDP, there's a number of actions that I can take, and here's where I'm choosing the environment that I want this to run into. And next, I can just click through my setup. For example, in this case, I require a particular reference, which is just a GUID that comes back from the webhook as well. So the next thing here that I want to do is I'm going to basically be sending this data somewhere. So we're going to send this to another application. So once again, just to show you the number of different applications that we can have here, I can first be, for example, retrieving that file from S3. That's what I'm going to be doing in my case. So here I'm clicking on the out-of-the-box applications or functions that we have related to files. So here, for example, I can get a file from a particular URL, and I can take the URL that's just come back from when I asked CDP for the URL for my file that's in S3, and that's what I'm going to then put in there. Once I've done that, I can decide what the destination is going to be. So just to show you once again, it could be Microsoft Dynamics that I'm sending it through, so you can see that coming up here. It could be instead I'm sending it directly to Facebook, so I'm using my out-of-box connections for that. It could be Amazon, so I can see here I can send it to another, I don't know, S3 bucket if I wanted to do that. It could be Azure, okay, so just to show you some of the applications here. Or it can also be Salesforce. So here, if you have a look at Salesforce Marketing Cloud, just to show you those same kind of out-of-the-box actions that we have available for Sitecore CDP, we also have available for these other applications as well. So for example, this is the one for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So you can see the number of actions there that I have available for me to use. So it's a really kind of, it's an out-of-the-box connection, but it's quite also kind of tight-knit in terms of what we can do. The one I want to do, though, is Google Ads. So here I'm going to click this one here, and I'm actually doing a custom action in my case. You'll see in the next example when I actually run it. The connection that I've set up to Google Ads, I've obviously set it up once, and I can reuse it over and over and over again. So you can see me just clicking it there. Okay, now I just want to show you what it's like, for example, say I wanted to handle errors. Okay, so say I wanted to make sure if any errors come back from Google Ads, I want to make sure that's actually going somewhere. So I could, for example, put this in here to handle errors. And here I can put in different applications, like for example, it could be PagerDuty, it could be Splunk, it could be a number of different things that I can set up here. So for example, here's an example of Splunk, or it could also be something like Datadog. I can also have this. So I'm just trying to show you the number of connections, the number of different things you can do here. So I'll set this up for now to be PagerDuty, and we'll show you what that kind of connection works like as well. If I can spell it right in this recording. Okay, so that was just an example. I just wanted to show you from scratch how these are set up. And I'm going to show you my real example now for Google Ads, and it will be running, and I'll show you how it works. So first of all, just to show you the setup here in Google Ads. So I'm going to be sending my audience into this particular audience list here, the one for users' propensity to purchase. And you can see here, this is basically the ID for the list that I'm going to be updating. So this is the one that I'll be referencing as well inside of mine. So if I go back in, I'll show you now the actual setup that I'm going to have inside Connect here. So this is the recipe that I actually built for pushing out my audience into Google Ads. So you can see a few different things are happening here. I have a loop to say if there's multiple signed URLs, and another loop as well. The first thing I have here is every single time I receive a webhook to this particular location, it's going to kick off this recipe. The next thing here is from that webhook, I'm getting back a reference to the audience sync that we set up. So I'm going to call that to get back the S3 location. That's what I'm doing here. And I'm just showing you here how easy it is using the recipe data to pull that across. So that recipe data is updated at each and every step in terms of what data is available, and I can just drag and drop them. Then from that, signed URLs are going to come back, and if there's multiple of those, I'm going to loop through them. And then for each of those different signed URLs, I'm basically getting the file from that particular location that's come back to me. And then after that, I'm just unzipping that particular file. Then within that, there's another loop that I'm doing, and then I'm actually just running a piece of Python here. And what this is basically doing is it's allowing me to hash the email. So that's what I require to do in the case of Google Ads. So here I'm hashing that email as well. So I want to show you as well that you can bring in your own kind of pieces of code or Python as well, and you can put these in these scripts. There's also a really great data kind of mapper function I wanted to show you that's more kind of business user focused. But again, if you come to me afterwards, I'll show you that in detail. This is the setup for Google Ads. There's 3 kind of different actions that I need to run here to kind of create an offline data user job. The first one here is where I'm putting in the ID that you saw earlier that I have set up in Google Ads. So I'm telling it basically which audience I want to update. So now when I run this, it's going to update that particular audience. This is all then just pieces that are around setting up with Google Ads. Once I create my offline data user job, I then need to basically add my users to it. So I'm doing all of that using the out-of-the-box connection. So now what I'm doing is I'm just testing this, and I'm going to basically send a webhook in, and I can show you what that webhook looks like. It would normally come in from our audience sync, but I was just sending it directly in this case. So every single time our audience sync completes, a webhook is sent in, and then when that's picked up, this recipe is going to run. So it's just been picked up there, the webhook that was sent in, and we can see my entire recipe here is completed successfully. So I can have a look, if I test the job, at each individual response that's come back from each of these nodes here. So for example, I can see from my Python scripts that this was the input, the entire file that you saw earlier with all the different details like first name, last name. There's other data extensions there that we're pushing through from CDP. So here you can see, for example, for one of the guests, the information that we have here we're sending back for the segment and different information there, like when the users come in, since when, and things like that. So in this case, I'm sending it to Google Ads. I only really care about the email, but in other cases, you might want your file to be larger with different information coming back from the CDP. So just to show you that user that you saw earlier and then how that data kind of connects into them, I can have a look here at their extensions, and I can see here, for example, the customer data value and the segment. In case you're familiar with CDP, you can have these kind of data extensions that aren't standard to CDP, and you can add in whatever kind of data you want here. And I'm just showing you how that same data can then be exported. So my output here is just that hashed email. So that's all that's coming back in the response. That's all I require here for Google Ads. So I can really see here, like for each and every node, what's kind of come back from each of them. Okay, so now we're going to go across to Google Ads and just see kind of what's happened now. This is completed successfully. So I'm just going to refresh this here. And what we're going to see is that particular audience list is basically updating. And we should also see like a new kind of entry here in terms of segment members that have been added to it. I'm just going to refresh this page here and we're just going to see those updates. So here, for example, we can see now there's one new entry kind of processing with those new hashed emails that we've just sent through. Okay, so the other things that we can do then with inside Connect is we can also mask the data. So you saw there, for example, I was running it where we could see absolutely everything that was coming back. Maybe not all customers want that. They want to have some things masked. So you can just basically flip that switch, mask the data, and now when I run it, I won't be able to see that request and responses coming back from that particular node. So I just want to show you that as well, that I can easily just flip that on, and then I can no longer see now what was in that file, for example, and what my hashed email output was. So I can also mask each of those individual nodes. And if I go out of this as well, what I can do is I can see kind of how the setup is. So you can see here, this is my full recipe. And if I go across to jobs, I can see all the times that this is run successfully and everything else. And I can dive into each of those and see the details like I was just showing you when I was testing the job. So I can see, for example, that one had masked data. What I can also see here is I can have a look at the dashboard and see all the kind of successful and failed executions of that particular job. So I can have this kind of overview, if I want to, of how that's running. And I can obviously dive into, for example, all the failed executions or anything else I want to have a look at. I can also obviously have a look at the connections that are set up. So in this case, I have 2 connections, one to CDP and one to Google Ads, and I can see all the details related to those. This is my Google Ads connection that I mentioned. I set up once, and then I can reuse it kind of over and over again. And just a tip, by the way, if any of you are setting this up for demo purposes, set up a test account with Google Ads so you get the right developer token, just a tip. The versions here as well, I obviously have version control and I can revert to a previous version if I want to. I haven't been commenting this, but one could add comments as well. So that was kind of everything from me. Perfect. So I don't think we have much time for questions, but you can reach out to me in any of these channels. I also don't use Twitter much, so I would prefer if it was Stack Exchange or Slack. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry about the technical equipment set. Yeah.